Temporary setback in one effort to hold the Trump administration accountable. Just yesterday, the D.C. Court of Appeals halted Judge James Boasberg's contempt proceedings against the Trump administration stemming from last month's deportation flights to El Salvador. Boasberg found the government ignored his orders to stop those flights from taking place. The court indicated that its orders is intended to provide, quote, sufficient opportunity to consider the government's appeal and should not be construed in any way as ruling on the merits of the motion. But even if the contempt proceedings are able to eventually continue, one major question remains. What happens if the president or any president and the federal government fail or outright refuse to follow a judge's orders? Chris and Anthony are back with us to help us answer that question.
I'm going to put a finer point on it.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to put a finer point on it. The president and this White House have ignored court orders. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the case of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, but a judge said that the White House violated the First Amendment in barring the Associated Press from joining the White House press pool as a dual member of the press, the Fourth Estate, and they still didn't let them back in. He said, don't put the planes in the air. Planes been going in the air.
Right.
So I guess I'm just kind of like, okay, they are defying the courts. Does it make us feel better? And us, I mean the collective us, like, you know, American citizens, to believe that they actually haven't crossed the line? Because they have.
Well, what's the line? That's the
point.
Well, the line is, I'm sorry, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
I used to be an intern at a law firm.
Right.
Okay, I had a lot of internships when I was in college, and I've been an intern at a law firm. I used to be a juvenile justice advocate. Okay, I've been to court a number of times. I've been to jail. Okay, to go visit the young people.
You need to rephrase how you say that.
And I always thought, it's in my experience, you go to court, the judge says something, there's a ruling, that's what it is. You can appeal, but there's a ruling, and it is what it is, and you have to follow the law. They're ignoring.
Right.
They're ignoring the court. So it's like, I feel sufficiently gaslit as an American citizen who I think is like fairly intelligent. Fox News might want to say otherwise, but I went to a nice, good Catholic school. They have crossed the line, have they not?
Yeah, I think they crossed the line back, the Supreme Court, back when they ruled that Donald Trump and practically anybody like him was above the law. They crossed the line back then.
Yeah.
The line back then. The question now, and I'm going to defer to the legal expertise, the question now is the degree from which we are over the line, right? There are different levels to it. You and I know, Kendrick Lamar.
Anytime that there's a question about whether someone has complied with a court order, you immediately find yourself in a very thorny situation. And you're right, there have been many fact patterns since the inauguration that suggest that the court orders have not been complied with. And the next step is precisely what Judge Boasberg is attempting to do, which is not to sort of rush to judgment, because you want whatever you're doing to stand on firm ground, right, if you're the judge, but to create a process by which you give the parties a time to potentially cure their error, which he has attempted to do, clarify things, and provide information. He's actually following the steps that we would want to see. They're a little bit slow, and I am hoping that the D.C. Circuit will eventually let it go forward. I think they probably will. And, at the end of that process, and we can get into that, he may find ultimately that someone should be held in contempt. And then there's going to be a whole set of remedies that may be available to him that are going to be hotly contested and potentially very complicated under the circumstances.
This whole thing, for me, takes me back to the first Trump administration and the discussion around the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, which says that, as President of the United States, you can't get rich. You can't use your office to create gains for yourself. And everyone kind of yawned past that and didn't pay attention to it. And then I think there were some matters that were brought before the courts on that regard, and everyone was told, I'm sorry, court said, you don't have standing. Well, I don't know who the hell does in that instance.
Right.
Because the man himself ain't going to come up and say, hey, court, stop me from making money off of my office, right? That's where I feel like we are now, where there's this thing with the courts in the expression that, everyone's kind of tiptoeing still. not really kind of leaning into what the Constitution and the law allows them to lead. To your point, Simone, I rule. Don't take the damn planes off the ground.
Right.
Or turn them around.
Or turn them around. And it's not a complicated ruling, right?
This is an order. It's an order. It's not an option. It's an order.
And the administration is like, okay, we'll get to that in a moment, right? And meanwhile, the rest of the system, Supreme Court, listen. Lord have
I know,
mercy.
that's right.
So
Michael.
here's my take on this.
But wait a minute, I want to
Okay.
do this. So the NBC News reports in both deportation cases, as well as an earlier decision involved claims the USAID had failed to pay money it owed the contractors. The court's decision, whether Trump won or lost, included implicit rebukes of district judges to appear to give at least some credence to the Trump administration's criticism. In other words, everybody's tiptoeing in the judicial system instead of using the hammer of the law and the Constitution the way the hammer and the law of the Constitution are used against everyday citizen out here who crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a distinct element here of sort of, particularly the Supreme Court, of like chickens coming home to roost. Because I think Anthony is correct in identifying the Supreme Court's decision on criminal immunity for Trump last summer as playing a very important role here. Because what you've identified, particularly on the emolument stuff, and this is that, so much of our constitutional system relies on the integrity and good faith of the leaders we elect,
right.
And particularly the presidency, who's at the very, very top. And when those things are sort of deficient, there aren't that many mechanisms for accountability. And I think when the Supreme Court, all 6 of the Republican appointees, granted him that immunity, it does appear to be the case that what we've seen since the inauguration, that sort of put some wind at his back and suggested that, okay, as long as I'm doing things that appear to be official acts, nobody's really going to be able to do anything.
He's going to do absolutely as much as the system will allow him to, the judicial system, the political system. I think back to his first attorney general nominee, Matt Gaetz. With all of his ethical problems, he was trying to make Matt Gaetz the United States attorney general. And Republicans in the Senate, they said no. They pushed back. They said this is a bridge too far, right? They slapped his hand, right? The system held to an extent. I would argue it didn't, because we got Pam Bondi, who herself is an election denier, who will not accept the overwhelming consensus of judicial rulings. But in the sense that Donald Trump did not get his first pick for Attorney General, the system worked. And he's doing the same thing on emoluments. He's doing the same thing more broadly with the Abrega case. All this stuff, he's trying to see how far the courts will let him get away with.
Well, I'll push back on the system holding in the Gaetz case. That was
the press doing their job.
That was the press and politics.